What's happening everyone, my name is Wayne, welcome to my channel. Gotta say this from the get-go, this video is sponsored by my Patreon, so a huge shout out to you guys. If you aren't a Patreon yet, you like the channel, you want to support it, head on over to my Patreon account for a couple of bucks a month. You'll get early access as well as extra and bonus content. If you don't know how to change the gear cable on your bike, you should be ashamed of yourself. But don't worry, I got you covered. On this episode, I'm going to be showing you how to quickly and simply change your gear cable on your mountain bike or bicycle. There's two different types of gear cable routing on your bike: interrupted and uninterrupted. Uninterrupted means that there is one singular piece of gear cable housing reaching from your shifter all the way through to your derailleur. Interrupted routing is like this bike over here, meaning that the cable is running inside the frame. Wherever the cable is outside the frame, there is gear cable housing. On this frame, there's three different external sections where there's gear cable housing, which is from the shifter to the frame over there. It enters the frame over there, and then inside the frame, there's no gear cable housing. It exits the frame down below here. Gear cable housing starts there again, and it continues to the seat stays over here where it enters the frame again. No housing inside the frame. Where it exits here at the back, there's housing, and that housing continues to the derailleur. If you've got this system here where it's interrupted, it's a little bit more labor intensive, but I'll show you some tips and tricks that I've learned over time on how to do this much quicker. I know that the gear cable needs to be changed because the quality of my shifting is just shit. I have to downshift twice on my shifter before it drops one gear at the back here. I think it might be some frayed cable here at the back. Also, this loop over here is kinked and it's not looking the best. So I'm gonna replace that section over there of gear cable housing just to make the shifting quality a lot better. I've got a SRAM EXO drivetrain, and the procedure should be the same between SRAM and Shimano. The only differences I believe would be that the entry point of the gear cable would be different on the Shimano shifter, where I believe that that's a grub screw that gets removed, give you access to a hole where the cable will go into the shifter. With SRAM, we'll have to remove the plate on the shifter to give us access to the entry point for the gear cable. These are the only tools that you will need for this procedure. Firstly, I will be needing some gear cable housing. I'm also going to be needing some gear cable, some Allen keys or hex keys. You're going to be needing a cable cutter. Now I've got a proper cable housing and cable cutter which I've purchased, but I have used a side cutter in the past. The difference is the cable housing and gear cable cutter works much better, and it cuts the cable and the housing without fraying the ends. I'll need a T25 Torx tool and some tape. I am just using normal insulation tape because that works perfectly fine. And lastly, you'll be needing a cable end cap as well as a long nose pliers to prevent the cable from fraying further down the line. It's best to work on a clean bike, so I've given this bike a wash. We don't need the back wheel, so I have removed that because that may cause some interference with the whole procedure. I'm going to need a T25 Torx tool to loosen the cable at the back of the derailleur here. Once the gear cable is loose, I can cut the end shroud and then I can start feeding it through the derailleur. This is very important. We're going to be using this gear cable over here to pull the new cable through the frame. So whatever you do, do not pull the cable through the frame yet. This seems to be the part that's giving me problems. It's a little bit kinked, so I'm going to replace this part of the gear cable housing. You got to remember that your gear cable is sheathed inside this gear cable housing. If there are any kinks or sharp bends, that will cause resistance on the gear cable. We want smooth and precise shifting, so the less resistance the better. If you are replacing all the gear cable housing on your frame, just remember that slow bends are the best. The sharper they are, the more resistance they will cause. This bike here has got these end caps that I need to remove. I'm going to remove the shifter from the handlebars, and that will give me access to the plate that's on top, and that will give me access to the routing for the gear cable inside the shifter. This EXO shifter uses a 3mm Allen key to remove that plate. I'm going to cut this gear cable here by the shifter. I'm going to leave about 2 inches of gear cable in front of the shifter so that there's enough cable to push the bulb through the shifter. you'll see that underneath the circular spring is the end bulb of the gear cable that you can just pry out with either an Allen key, or you can push the extra piece of cable that you've left in front there. Once you've removed the old gear cable bulb from the shifter, we're going to install the new gear cable in the shifter and start fishing it through the frame. Before you start threading it through here, make sure that you've clicked the shifter down to the lowest gear on the cassette, meaning the smallest gear. Once the gear cable is all the way in, we can reinstall the cover plate on the shifter and reinstall the shifter onto the handlebars. Now, under normal circumstances, this would be hard to fish this cable through the frame. But because the old cable is still installed inside the frame, I'm going to attach this cable onto the existing cable. And the existing cable is going to pull this cable through the frame. I'm going to be using this insulation tape over here and then just attaching the old cable to the new one. From here, I feed it through this gear cable housing over here, which is the external, and then when it goes back into internal routing, I'm going to follow the same procedure. I'm going to be replacing this last bit of gear cable housing over here at the back just to create a more gradual and gentle loop. I want to make sure that the housing is properly secured and in place inside the frame's cover plates. Before I make this final connection here at the derailleur, I take the barrel adjuster on the shifter, I tighten that clockwise all the way, and then I will loosen that 4 or 5 clicks. The cable usually stretches out, so I'm going to need to tighten it more than I need to loosen it. You basically just pull this cable hand tight and then tighten the Torx bolt at the back here. Make sure that the small button is clicked all the way until it can't on the shifter. Pull the gear cable tight, tighten it up with the T25 Torx on the SRAM derailleur. And your shifting should be good. Now that it's all tightened up, I can cut the cable shorter. Now to finalize the installation of the gear cable, take the cable end, use your long nose pliers to crimp the cable end on the cable. Put your wheel back on, adjust those gears with the barrel adjuster, and go shred some trail. Remember, hit that subscribe button and that bell and you'll be notified every time I drop a video. If you have any questions, leave it in the comment section below. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next episode.